Hi everyone, welcome to Unit 9 of CAT125R, Public Rhetoric and Practical Communication. As you are, of course, aware by this point in the course, your final assignment, your collaborative project, asks you to use Storify to curate a number of sources for a particular audience. I wanted to spend a little bit of our time with this week's intro video thinking about the term curate and some of the criticisms of how it has come to be used in the past few years. In doing so, we'll also be thinking about how to present your own projects in such a way that your curation will be seen as relevant to your audience and significant to that audience. In other words, we're going to be thinking about how to approach curation rhetorically. Once associated strictly with the world of museums, the term curate has expanded into multiple fields in recent years. Fields like music, fashion, social media outlets like Pinterest or Tumblr. And the broad use of this term has brought with it a lot of criticism in media outlets in the past 7 or so years. And critics of the use of the term in fields other than museum studies indicate that or argue that the term becomes meaningless at best when it's used so broadly. At worst, it becomes something that assigns an air of importance to something that really is meaningless. So as a 2009 New York Times article put it, the word curate has become a fashionable code word among the aesthetically minded who seem to paste it onto any activity that involves culling and selecting. In more print-centric times, the term of art was edit, as in a boutique edits its dress collections carefully. But now, among designers, disc jockeys, club promoters, bloggers, and thrift store owners, curate is code for I have a discerning eye and great taste. The resistance to the use of the term curate in social media contexts is really captured in this excerpt from an NPR piece on the matter. The passage reads, Chelsea Kelly at the Milwaukee Art Museum wrote on her blog that she sometimes sees the word flung around on the web and thinks, wait, what? By saving photos of cookie recipes I want to try or dresses I wish I could afford, I'm a curator? No. Here, Kelly suggests that the use of the term as it relates to something like Pinterest waters the idea of curation down to the point that it no longer carries any weight or meaning. However, there are others who see the value of the term in new contexts. In this passage from the same New York Times article I referenced earlier, we see the former editor of Pitchfork comparing the act of curation to other forms of remix culture. The passage reads, the talent for choosing among countless objects is not very different from the work of collage artists or top DJs. Remix culture is a form of creative expression in its own right. So elements of remixing, like flow and juxtaposition, that are considered an art in the realm of DJing can apply to other fields as well when thinking about curation, according to this particular argument. We can also find arguments that say that online curation is not only relevant, but also serves an important rhetorical function. As a 2014 Forbes article lays out, it's a critically important mission being made more important as the nature of content curation and distribution shifts. The fire hose of unfiltered information that's masquerading as content demands a quality curation filter. So, how can you ensure that the curation work you do for your final project in the course is the important kind and not the kind that leads museum curators to take to their blogs with angry comments about curation? The answer is really in our old friend rhetoric. Your curation will have more weight and relevance if you have a well-defined purpose and a clear understanding of your audience. So one of the most important ways you can execute your purpose and as a result create a meaningful curation is through the effective discussion of your sources in Storify. One of your readings from last week from the Writing Spaces book is called Annoying Ways People Use Sources. And what I really like about this chapter is that it takes a rhetorical look at citation practices. I know that citation can feel like this really rule-bound thing that doesn't have any purpose beyond satisfying a picky teacher. In fact, though, citation and citing sources effectively has a huge effect on your audience, on your ethos, and on the way your audience responds to your work. There's a lot of overlap between how you will use sources in your Storify and how you may be familiar with using sources in other more traditional research papers that you've done in the past. However, you want to make sure that you are taking steps to adapt your writing to the new context in Storify, adapting to the particular rhetorical context in which you're working. So as Stedman says in the Annoying Ways People Use Sources chapter, one of the fundamental ideas of rhetoric is that speakers or writers or composers shape what they say, write, or create based on what they want it to do, where they're publishing it, and what they know about their audience or readers. And those decisions include nitty-gritty things like introducing quotations and citing paraphrases clearly. So let's look at some examples from past CAT125 projects to see how the text produced for the Storify can hinder or enhance your purpose, your rhetorical purpose. One of the terms that the Stedman article uses about common mistakes folks make in citing sources is the idea of armadillo roadkill, or dropping in a quotation without introducing it first. So here's an example of a Storify project that does this sort of armadillo roadkill thing. We see here what I would call a citation dump, just a pile of links with really no discussion of them. The only discussion says, as you can see, intellectual property is a well-defined term, which means it should be a well-respected term. I should add here, right, this Storify project is actually one that a former CAT125R TA put together as a kind of Storify full of problems, so we had a resource of something to pick on. So this isn't an actual student project, but one that sort of demonstrates common problems that we see in the Storify projects. So without any introduction or direct discussion of the sources, the audience doesn't know what the connection really is between the sources linked and the group's or the project's purpose. So this is where our discussion of the rhetorical nature of effective citation really comes in. Your audience has the thing about Storify, right, is that your audience has the link to the original source sitting right there. So if they want to read through the source, that's very easy for them to do. Your job is to do something more than just summarize the source, right? Your job is to explain its significance as it relates to the purpose of your project, as it relates to the purpose, the audience, and the context, really, right, our key rhetorical terms. For each source that you include in your Storify, try asking yourself or your group members, what do you want your audience to think or do after they have encountered this source? And use that question to help you guide the commentary you provide. So as a more effective alternative to incorporating sources, let's look at this example in which the group contextualizes the purpose of their source through a sub-question, right? So we have this smaller question that the project poses: how can Spotify, one of the most famous music sharing services, be legal? And then under that question, there are a few more subcategories. And the students use their discussion of the source here, Spotify for Artists, to answer directly the question they pose about the legality of Spotify. In other words, they're fulfilling their rhetorical purpose by posing and answering questions their specific audience may have. So as you continue to research and compose your projects for the class, continue to keep in mind the rhetorical principles we've been discussing all quarter. uh, thinking about audience, purpose, and context, just as you did with the statements of purpose and with your expertise speech, will help you come up with an effective curation that fulfills the purpose you set out to achieve. So good luck as you're working on the projects. I encourage you to email me with questions. Come by my office hours if you'd like a second opinion on any of your sources or on how the Storify project itself is coming together. I am here to help, and I'm looking forward to reading what you all come up with. Have a great week.